What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Devy Royale. Today, we are talking through another NFL team. We're on to the Detroit Lions. We're talking through all 32 teams this offseason, talking about what happened in 2023, notable roster moves, their current depth chart, some schedule predictions, some fantasy projections. And so, we're going to talk through all of that, and we're going to start with what happened in 2023. So, the Lions, 12-5 last year, good on offense, bad on defense. That was kind of that's been the mold for the last couple of years. But the offense really hit its stride last year with Jameer Gibbs being incorporated fifth in points per game, second in yards, third in passing yards, sixth in rushing yards. This was an elite offense last year. Defense on the other side, not so much. 25th in points per game, 23rd in yards, 31st in passing defense. They had a ton of injuries in that secondary, but the secondary was pretty rough. The rushing defense was very good. Randy, how did you feel about the 2023 Lions?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of realized potential, is the best way to put it. A team that arguably should have made the playoffs the year prior, fought really hard, were the eighth seed, last team out, lost due tiebreakers. So going into this year, they had something to prove. They played phenomenally, especially on offense. It's not really surprising the defensive numbers. It's if you look at the roster, the depth chart when we get into it. It's definitely a team that was built to stop the run, and they were hoping the pass rush would lead to better secondary play, but all the injuries and everything just really added up. And they couldn't get it done, so they made a focus on it, though, so a good improvement into this season, but definitely a success of a year last year, a great building block to what this team should be for the future.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, really, it's funny. You go back and people were like, momentum doesn't exist from season to season. And a lot of NFL players even said that, but it was like they beat the pulp out of the Packers in that final game a couple of years ago, and they just rode that into the next year. Obviously, they had talented players. And really, there hasn't, it's kind of strange because they overturned the roster on the defensive side. But I think that's maybe the right thing to do is to move on from some of these pieces. Jonah Jackson was a big loss on that offensive line, but they replaced him with Kevin Zeitler. So DJ Reader added to this defense, Marcus Davenport, Amik Robertson should help that secondary. But then they really went all out at corner in the draft, got Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr. They drafted running back / safety Sione Vaki later in the draft as well. Christian Mahogany was one of the best value picks of the NFL draft this year. So, and then on the side of losing things like CJ Gardner-Johnson, Cam Sutton, Jerry Jacobs, Charles Harris, both the Aquaras, like there was a lot of turnover on that side. But would you say that's a net positive from what we saw last year?
Yeah, and they got rid of a lot of, the Aquaros and the Harris. That's a little bit of the old tenure, the veterans on the roster, expensive guys as well. And same with Tracy Walker, Cam Sutton, a whole different reason for leaving this team. And then CJ Gardner Johnson, it was a guy they brought in and out kind of thing. And I think he's back to where he's going to be best fit. I don't think he perfectly fit with this team. I think he did until they drafted the best value of last year in Brian Branch, who completely took over his role. So he became unneeded, and he was also injured. So it helped out a ton there. I think they went, like you said, hard at the cornerback position in the draft, really nailed that one, brought in a veteran. I think you improved at edge rusher, bringing in Marcus Davenport as a high upside guy. Same thing the Vikings did last year. Hopefully it works out better for them. And then DJ Reader is an enormous improvement in the interior. Zeitler, even if you say it's, in and out, same thing. Zeitler played well last year, but probably a down year from what he was in the past, but still pretty good. They're probably going to get the same amount or close to the same outcome as Jonah Jackson at half the price. I mean, that's great team building there.
Yeah, got a little older. I think that
Yeah,
you start to maybe worried about injuries, but offensive line injuries, they
yeah.
they they normally play through those.
But
So
yeah, you got older there, but you also drafted Manu at tackle to be a rotational depth guy from British Columbia, and then like you said, Chris Mahogany, a guy we both loved at guard, is a good starting guard in the NFL. Maybe not an All Pro, but he can definitely be a starter for this team in the future. A good depth guy for this year for sure, and we'll take the spot from Zeitler when he's needed.
I think so. One name we didn't touch on a whole lot was Josh Reynolds. And part of that is because the team does expect Jameson Williams to take a step forward this year. One piece of this team that I still feel is they need to improve is the wide receiver room. When you're led by Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're in good shape. But when you have Khalif Raymond starting, that doesn't lend itself to me thinking you're in good shape. But overall, this team is still looking fantastic on offense. This running back room is one of the best in football. If Jameson Williams does take a step forward and can be that second wide receiver, kind of understands the offense a little bit more, they don't just use him on go routes. I think there's a whole different dynamic that they can introduce to this offense because while Josh Reynolds was good, he was very much so a reliable target, but there wasn't a whole lot of splash there. When you would watch Josh Reynolds play, I think he was just the guy that Goff would go to in key situations. I think they're hoping to find one of those. They added, Traquan Smith, Donovan Peoples-Jones came in last year. So I'm wondering if one of those guys can fill that role. But I think they're hoping that Jameson Williams takes this big leap forward this year.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the key to further unlocking this offense. It's the last piece of the puzzle on this offensive side. Your offensive line is still top 5 in football. You added a little bit more youth and depth this offseason. Your running back tandem is one of the best in football as well. A solid signal caller in Goff that's leading this team completely and deserves the contract he's getting. You hit the jackpot in Sam Laporta last year. Like, this offense is fully humming. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a top 5 receiver. Like, we're doing great things here, and then we just need Jameson Williams to really do something. And then, with Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond together, it was kind of the same thing. It made sense to let one go and then hope that DPJ or Traquan Smith can help on that outside to be a little bit better of a outside receiver than more just of a slot where Amon-Ra's a bit in and out.
Yeah. I still have hope for Antoine Green, man. I really liked his college film. He's flashed a little bit here and there, but it doesn't feel likely at this point. But I'm still going to hold out hope that someone's got to step up in this wide receiver room. This is one of my favorite teams to make the weird in-season trade to add wide receiver depth. If someone goes down, if Amon-Ra goes down, this offense it isn't looking very good now. Would we expect that? I think he's a pretty tough kid. But it gets a little shaky. There's not a lot of depth there in that wide receiver room. But with Laporta, I think Brock Wright's good. I think James Mitchell's good. So like they could fill that role in a way, but that's just one concern I would have for the offense. But Ben Johnson's a dude, so
yeah. And their cornerback room looked kind of like this going into last year, and we see the efforts they made to improve that this offseason. Yeah. I think we're going to see the same thing at wide receiver next year, but they felt comfortable giving Jameson Williams another shot because this is really his first full season. I mean, he kind of played last year. Like,
got suspended though. That was we thought we were getting that last year, and we had the suspension, and then it just didn't come to fruition. But there were so many flashes where it's like, yeah, that's a player we saw in college. Like,
exactly. If we can get close to the player in college, this team is going to be insane.
Yeah. Let's hope Goff can get him the football. On the defensive side, so Aiden Hutchinson obviously leads this defense. DJ Reader now in the middle with Ali McNeil, Levi Onwuzurike, Marcus Davenport, like you said. But I think they really liked what James Houston was able to give them. I think Josh Pascal still has a ton of upside. Alex Anzalone's still your middle linebacker. Not a huge fan of that. I know he plays well, but I think there's a limit to what he can give you. But with Jack Campbell there, hopefully taking another step forward, Derek Barnes doing the same thing. And then, we didn't even mention Carlton Davis is on this team now. They traded for Carlton Davis. And so you traded for Carlton Davis earlier this offseason, added Terrion Arnold, added Amik Robertson. You still have, Emmanuel Mosley, you have Ennis Rakestraw. Your safety tandem now looks good, and I think Brian Branch is going to play a little bit of that slot role as well. So now this defense is looking like, okay, we've got some playmakers out here. Carlton Davis had an up and down year last year, and I would say mostly down, but they're hoping that he can return to the form that we know he can give.
Yeah, and again, same thing. This defense is clearly in a better position going into this season than they were last year. Jack Campbell was a huge improvement to this linemaking room, along with Malcolm Rodriguez and Derek Barnes stepping up. Now you have 4 linebackers that could always be in the field at all downs. even Anzalone and Rodriguez, a little bit less, possibly like pass coverage athletic, but they fly all over the field. It allows them to make up for some of those, maybe not man to man coverage skills, but they can really click and close with the zone defenses. And Jack Campbell's a small around good linebacker who is improving in the passing game as well. This is a great linebacking core for the future, and you improve the secondary a ton. Carlton Davis may be closer to a band-aid than, a lockdown corner, but he should be really good this year while the rest of them kind of step up. And if you can keep building that and building all this, you got rotational guys at edge rusher, four of them really, and Aiden Hutchinson never has to leave the field. John Kaminsky can go inside and outside. This is a good defense on paper going into this year. It's just if they can improve through the passing game.
Yeah. I think they're encouraged by what Afatu Melifonwu gave them at safety last year as well. I think they've got 3 really good safeties, to be completely honest, and that's a different feel for what this team is. When they've had okay safety play, but I think that'll go a long way in locking down that back end. And this corner room is just so much better than last year. This is it's tough to pick against them as we get into the schedule, which we're going to do right now. They open with.
Sorry, I was going to say also added in Vaki in there as well to be a rotational safety, a guy that we know can play in the box and over the top. He's kind of perfect blend.
We'll see what position he plays, man. He might just
exactly,
play running back.
he also, I mean, they have so many running backs. I don't know about using him there. He could be a great kick returner for you as well, which is going to be huge this year. I think he's going to play some meaningful snaps this year. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked with him if, we go the same kind of route as Divine Diablo. And in 4 years, he's going to be a starting will linebacker for you and be heavily improved for this defense.
I think he might end up being a two-way player. To be like, if he beats out Craig Brown with RB3 and plays defense, that's what his value was. That's why he was such a draft Twitter favorite. He's such a fun player. They open up with Matthew Stafford, which I think is incredibly fun. I do love this little rivalry that's going between Matthew Stafford and Detroit fans. It is real. It is real. I know some Lions fans, and it's an interesting thing. I think I think they're happy to have Goff. I'll say that. Then they get the Bucks, which should be a really good matchup as well. Cardinals probably bye, which is not very favorable because this is a pretty tough schedule. Randy, talk to us about the strength of schedule, their betting odds, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, they have a 10.5 over-under with, minus 128 on the under, plus 104 on the over. Kind of tight lines there. 21st strength of schedule, though, out of the 32. So they did get a good luck of the draw necessarily. And again, that is with records from last year. So when you look at these teams, maybe you're catching the Vikings early in week 7. So maybe you get that one there. And maybe week 18, it's a much tougher team. Same with the Titans. You get in week 8, maybe that's the best spot. Cardinals, same thing, week 3, still working out the growing pains. And even the Rams with that, the defense is really reset. So it's early, week 1. You might be able to play in more of a shootout that game, and that fits your style better. Minus 205 to make the playoffs, so great odds there. Plus 145 to win the division, best odds of the division. And the 4th best odds at plus 1,300 to win the Super Bowl. So they are a heavy favorite going into the year, one of the highest over-under lines. And, yeah, I think the strength of schedule by the end of the year will look a lot closer to the middle of the pack or higher. But going into the beginning, I think it's a good line. You have some tough competition early, but you do have 3 out of those 4 first games as home games. So that's going to be huge. Goff is playing, I believe, it's like 14 or 15 out of 17 of the games in a dome, which is enormous for him and this offense. So I'm pretty favorable with them going this year. I have them 13-4 in the 1 seed.
Very nice. I think that strength of schedule is a little it leads you astray, I think, because this is a tough schedule. The Jaguars, I think, are improved. The Texans are vastly improved. The Colts with Anthony Richardson are a whole different ballgame, and we know that the Lions struggle to stop rushing quarterbacks from what Justin Fields was able to do against them pretty consistently. And they get Kyler Murray. And so this schedule, to me, I have them playing 6 games against playoff teams like current playoff teams in my predictions here. So I have them a little bit low. I have them at 11-6. I have them as the 5 seed, which Lions fans, I don't want you to be mad at me, because if you go back and listen to, it was only on the podcast, it wasn't in video form, but if you listen to my Cowboys preview, I have the Lions handedly taking care of the Cowboys in the playoffs, and I do think that this is an actual contender. It's just they need to get to the playoffs. They do that just fine. I think they have a very good shot at winning the Super Bowl this year, or at least playing 4-1 opposite Mahomes. But this schedule down the stretch is really, really tough outside of that Week 18 game against the Vikings.
Which, like I said, could be tough by Week 18.
That's right. That's right. And so, but like that, really from Week 9 on, you could lose all of those games. Like I could make an argument that that other team will beat the Lions. So that's why it gets a little tough. But 11-6, still a fantastic football team. They're vastly improved. And for fantasy, this is an offense that I certainly want pieces of. Let's get into that. So I have Jared Goff ranked as my QB 12, Jahmyr Gibbs, RB 4, David Montgomery, RB 27, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 2, almost eclipsing or almost getting to 2,000 yards. A little low on Jameson Williams, I think, compared to what consensus is and maybe what the hype is, but I just want to see it first. This is 670 yards isn't anything to sneeze at, but the touchdown numbers might not be there. We'll see if he can improve on that. And then Sam Laporta I have as my tight end 1. I think he's going to be absolutely fantastic for this team this year. What stands out to you?
I think I would say it's the Jameson Williams would stand out the most. But when you're thinking about it, I mean, you have Goff at 429 completions. Amon-Ra getting 139 of those, so that's a ton. Laporta getting 103, so that's 242 of the 429. So we're over 50% just there. I think people might see the James Williams as low, but I think you have him at 80 targets and 49 receptions. So if that goes up to 100 because he's actually playing well and he's a true cog of this offense, then now we're talking, I mean, that's roughly like 60-something, 70 receptions, probably almost 1,000 yards, possibly 5-6 touchdowns. Now we're into the very low end wide receiver 3, high wide receiver 4 numbers. So that's part of you saying, let's just see it. Because we haven't even seen the full season from Jameson. I don't know if we will. I assume, I mean, he's a tough kid. It's just hasn't had the best luck coming into the year these first 2 years. I think we do see a vast improvement from him, and it's clear that he wants it, I think. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. And that's going to be the biggest thing with guys on this team. You have to want it with this kind of coaching staff. So besides that, I don't think anyone should be shocked at anything. Maybe a lot of people would have Gibbs a little bit lower and Monty a bit higher, like closer to each other. But when you're looking at it, I mean, it's probably the touchdowns, which is what's going to flip it for people. Maybe Monty getting like 15 and Gibbs getting like 8 on the ground, but still getting his 3 through the air. So that would be, RB 8 to 10 and RB probably like 21. I mean, minuscule changes, but draft-wise, that's huge. So
it is. And having 3 position players in the top 5 is tough to do. But like I said, Ben Johnson's a dude. I do want to point out before we move on from the projections, that Jameson Williams line is better than what Josh Reynolds posted last year. So
yes, it is, yeah.
And except for the touchdowns. So Reynolds had 5 touchdowns last year. I had Jameson coming down a little bit because I think while he is a big play waiting to happen, I do think that they have a very clear plan when they get inside the red zone, and that is we're going to feed the ball to our running backs, and then we're going to throw it to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. That's what they showed us last year. So
and
I think
you have Goff at 30 touchdowns. So just on the screen, we have 24 of the 30 touchdowns. No, 27 of the 30 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So
I have it being
tough.
a very condensed touchdown distribution there. So
and there's going to be an RB3 that has a rushing touchdown or 2. Goff will probably get 1 or 2. So maybe there's some fluctuation there. Depending, and again, we're expecting this defense to be a little bit improved. So that's going to limit some of these shootout numbers that are going to inflate some of these guys. And without those inflations, we still have insane pieces on this team. One of the best teams to draft. And I think I hope people aren't surprised by the Goff numbers. They shouldn't be at
People
this
were
point, but
people were pretty mad that I had Jared Goff inside my top 12 and Kyler Murray not in my top 12. And that was the main hang up of people when I put my rankings out. But like I said, I project out 32 teams. I don't look at the rankings. I don't adjust the rankings because of where they land. I just project based on, last year and projecting forward. And this is what it came out to be. So I think Jared Goff's a pretty good ad in fantasy this year. Maybe not in Scott Fishbowl because of the lack of rushing, but still a fine QB2, I guess. But this team, to me, this is a Super Bowl contender. I think that's the main thing with the Lions, a Super Bowl contender that we want every piece of. We just hope for health. We hope for wide receiver room health, especially because it could get a little dicey there. But to me, this team is set up for, multiple NFC championship runs, at least, over the next few years. They've got Amon-Ra locked down. They've got Jared Goff locked down here, or not yet, but they will. And so I think they're in good shape. So that'll do it for this one of the Detroit Lions here. We're going to continue doing these. They're going to be all over the place. They might be on YouTube. They might be on Patreon. They might be on the podcast. We're going to see. So make sure you just subscribe to all the things, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on the podcast, join the Patreon if you feel so inclined. We will have a lot of content coming out over there. We're talking about some more projects, but it's $5 a month. You can join our Discord and get access to our rankings and our trade calculator and things like that. So thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.